a bad combo. It's like, like welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night coming at you live United Public Radio, 7:11 p.m. Central. Yeah, I was at Panama City Beach with Christina yesterday, and we brought the dogs to like this dog park. There's all these dogs there. Uh, Running around. At first, I was a little nervous because I was like, man, this is a lot of dogs. What could go wrong? But nothing did. And they all got along. And I was like, well, this must be like dog heaven. So hopefully my dog's in some kind of situation where they're all playing and whatever. But the point is, oh, what was funny though is the bulldogs there. A giant Great Dane chased them around, so that was funny. And the looks on their faces of the American Bulldogs' faces at this Great Dane, like, what in the hell is this thing? It was
That
like they
ain't no
didn't know.
dog.
That thing is like a horse chasing them around. But it was funny because I told the one dog, I said, well, now you know how the little Chihuahua feels when you mess with it all the time. But those dogs are big. But
Yeah, they're
yeah,
huge.
it made me a little nervous watching them. They were nice though, but still. But then we went to the ocean, and the dogs drank a little bit of ocean water. One's got the poops, so that was nice. One chases the water like crazy. Like you can't even turn on a hose, and she goes nuts trying to get it like it's a toy, like the water. And like I'll be outside trying to do whatever, like, will you go away? I'm just trying to use a hose. And she goes crazy, but she was doing it to like probably the waves. Like going nuts with it. But tonight's guest, Jerry Avalos, the return of Jerry Avalos. How's it going, Jerry? You got Jay McNicholas here, co-host.
Going great. Thanks for having me again. And Jay, I just have to say, your camera is amazing. It's awesome. We have to get.
I've got 3 huge lights, like 300-watt lights all around me. So it's not the camera, it's the lighting.
Good enough.
That's right. Look at that head shining. I usually have more light, but I'm so.
If I aim it right, I can burn holes in walls.
But that's right. Jay's been moving. You've been moving, right?
Yeah, I'm packing to move. I'm getting ready to move to Waynesboro, Pennsylvania at the beginning of July. I got to be out of here at the end of the first week of July, or June rather, and then move into the new house in July. So it's going to be a hectic 2 months. So not fun.
Well, one thing I want to talk about with Jerry, and of course Jay can join in anytime, is I don't know. I've been talking to a lot of people lately, and they keep telling me they feel dizzy. Like my mom feels dizzy. We feel dizzy here a lot. Just weird stuff that feels uncomfortable. It's like everyone feeling like that lately. Seems like it. I don't know if
Mhm.
everyone is, but it's just like I remember my dog Jack. He was falling over from like weird dizzy stuff. So I mean, is it the Earth's magnetic fields? Is China throwing some dizzy scratch at us from satellites? All of the above. But no, is this something you're doing experiencing, Jerry? I mean, weird stuff that just feels uncomfortable a lot. What's going on?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm hearing this brought up a lot. I mean, for myself, I mean, let's put it this way: you we do take for granted the cosmic bodies and how they move and things like this in terms of what it might impact us on our body. But there is legitimate study on this because it really does affect us in different ways. And I've been hearing this similar stuff from a lot of people, actually. Yeah, so like you're not alone there. Apparently, this is what's been happening a lot. That people have felt their equilibrium a little off, or just other kind of like you can say sort of like internal navigation is kind of wobbly, things like that. And I can't say I know for sure, but I know one of the things that I've been tracking for a little bit of time here has been, of course, like our Schumann resonance, and that's one of the things that over here, like, it's pretty much every day we're checking for a while now. And then two, back X amount of years ago now, from 2012, everyone was talking about like our position in the galaxy and such, and so there is some validity to that, to where we're kind of spinning, and some of the things that we're seeing here like are explained in relation to classic astronomy. So and this is evident, and I forget which institute or science it was, but it's credible place that does a lot of the figuring for us, shall we say, are saying that our planet's spinning faster, and it can be up to like a second a day faster, and it's been doing this for months. So we can imagine like what like it's really kind of boggles the mind to think what that means to our perceptions on a lot of levels. So like equilibrium, time displacement, and just weird stuff. And this kind of where it doesn't surprise me that we are seeing more influx of UFO sightings and things like this, because it lends to the credence of different wavelengths and bandwidths that we're able to perceive now. And so like if we have a shift in the literal Earth's rotation and that density field, and if that density field is what physics is based off of in terms of speed of light and light bending around density, etc., then that density has shifted in a weird way to us, or some way that we're not used to. And so I can imagine, yes, and this is where I do think that there's a lot of geological and even geopolitical events that are probably be catalyzed because of this sort of weird spin. Because as is also glanced over in the news, how the pole shifted quite a few miles, like quick, within days. It kind of moved like dozens of miles essentially. And now we have the magnetic north and the true north kind of doing two different things. And there's been recalibration of flight patterns, et cetera, because of this. So I do think that this is factoring in to so many people like reporting this sort of equilibrium shift for themselves,
I know I saw something from that Leak Project show about Schumann resonance or something in the title that it had increased or something like that.
It's
And
been really high spikes.
why do you think it's increasing? What's going on? Why is it
Well,
increasing?
I do think that these factors that we're talking about, because they're astronomical events, so they span quite a long time.
Is it
So
other planets or the sun? I know I've seen articles and I forget what it's called. I know I've talked about this before with I forget his name, but we talked about waves and stuff and psychedelics. Kalaman or something. He's like a Swede or something. But anyway, I've seen things about planets. They'll send like a little zap to other planets, or maybe the sun to us. Like it's like, are they communicating? What are they doing? I know there's been weird like science articles. That's something that happens. They send like information. I don't know what it is, but they're doing something.
well, in that sense, like that's even if we don't really know what those are, we can say that those are still some kind of quantifiable energy or particles. And those particles do hit us. And yes, it's like, how does that affect us? There's not enough study yet, I think, on a sincere level, to really have all the answers to that. But I think it's safe enough to say that it does something. And because there is different disciplines that are definitely looking into that on a more academic level, because there is too much of a correlation. And like how I often say, it's like the gamma rays from the sun, which are the ones that do the most damage. It's not really ultraviolet, it's the gamma rays that punch holes through everything. Like those are the same gamma rays that travel across the cosmos too, that come from our sun. They're like the same type. So it's like that still, the sun affects us biologically. And so then too with these other cosmic suns, just on a more minute scale. And so that can't just be discredited, especially over time. These things factor in.
Now, I've had some weird things happen with me and the sun all my life. I think what it is, we have an energy body that's made out of light on some level, and it's connected to that sun somehow. I mean, divine manifestation of light with the sun, whatever you want to call it. It's weird, no matter how you break it down. But there's been some times where I will go and close my eyes and let the white light fill me. And outside, the white light fills me, baby. That's right. But outside, I'll do that too. And then I come inside and it's like something's showing me something. At first, I'm like, is this just sunspots? Maybe some of them. But I was in a gym and I saw one over every person in the gym, this little pink like orb after having a sun experience, and everyone had one. If it was just a sunspot, you would just see it real quick or whatever. It was like everyone had like a weird little energy thing over them, and it was really weird. It's like, am I seeing their souls? What am I seeing? I don't know, but it was, and I felt uplifted in a way somehow. And then
Mm.
I've had other things happen, like I came into this house, and this is a weird one. Uh, the grandmother here, she's still with us and has dementia situations. But I saw some things floating around the house. I was like, well, maybe that's orbs. But I looked in her room and I swear It was like, imagine a big sunspot, but it was shaped like a gray alien, but it wasn't physical like us. It was like astral is the best
Mm-hmm.
way. And it was in there, and I swear it peeked at the door, like it looked surprised maybe that I saw it, but it wasn't like physical like us. It was like a weird sunspot, but it was shaped as something. That is the best way to describe it. And it had the big black eyes. I've never seen them before. Some DMT, I've thought I've seen some in my inner mind's eye. That's it. I've never seen a gray before in my life. That was the closest, and I still doubt what I saw in that her room on some level. It's like that really what it was, or just my imagination. But that's what it looked like. It had a big head and black eyes, and then she had been feeling kind of out of it lately, and not herself. And I said a prayer to Archangel Michael, to God, or whatever, to clear it if it was anything. And then shortly after, she came back and was feeling normal. And she has phases or whatever, but I don't know if that thing was parasitical, or maybe it was something helping. I don't know. Try not to judge, but I did have that experience happen. And then later, me and Christina watched old Walking and Communion, because I wanted to see some of those weird ones in that. After we watched that days and days after that happened, but Christopher Walken Communion. But anyway, it seems like, I mean, like the sun like gives me some kind of weird vision. Like I've had some weird. I'm a sun king, I think. Lu, the sun god from Arthurian myth, and I'm kind of a vampire, pasty dude that shouldn't like the sun. I don't hate the sun though, but I do have weird sun stuff happen. That's kind of odd,
Well,
but I don't know what it means.
and I mean, with the how you're mentioning about even just on a physical level of, say, like you're kind of doing some sun gazing, I can kind of see how like physically that can tune your mind and your eyes there to kind of see like maybe the electromagnetic field coming off their head a little bit, or the heat coming off their head. So in the sense, it's a type of their aura, which isn't necessarily that outlandish to think. And then how you're mentioning with this sort of like almost etheric form that shows up. And this kind of gets into what we're talking about with frequencies and shifting, because just kind of like how all of our three of our cameras are a little different. How Joe's lighting makes it so, or Jay's lighting makes it so that you can see him very clearly, and how Jeff's is dark. And so if Jeff decided to move real fast, it would almost seem like he's not there. And if he was still talking, and this is what I'm theorizing is happening with a lot of these different paranormal encounters, be it extraterrestrials or spirit encounters. It has to do with this oscillation rate and our ability to perceive it on some level. And so having this sort of like half-phased being there makes sense to me, and it kind of makes sense how sometimes they're able to touch or move things, because it's a matter about syncing those bandwidths, so to speak, to have that magnetic repulsion effect, which kind of really contact really is, and so on that quantum level. And so this is something that for myself and my wife, we look into, professionally on different levels. So it works into what we do with our products, but then also we do with our research, with clearing homes and such from entities and things like that, and just personal experiences over time. Like for myself, I always have perceived some of this paranormal phenomenon in some way, and it was just so natural for me. I didn't know it was quote unquote paranormal until I got older. But then I'm seeing like these great aliens we're talking about we all see these same entities for some reason, and some of these stories are starting to intersect. Like what I've seen in relation to them kind of intersects. Like you're saying, you didn't necessarily feel it was a bad thing. It might not have been, because it seems to me that and from other researchers and experiencers, that there's a type of genetic relation that we have to some of these different great entities.
Maybe a
so
caretaker of the dead or something, like the ones in Communion and stuff like that. That's what I
well,
thought too.
to a certain degree, yes, because this is where it does kind of get relatively convoluted. But it's like there's so many people who have similar experiences. You have to kind of wonder, like this is like they represent, or they're kind of like a future deviation of a timeline from us. Like so they're not necessarily us. But they're also kind of related to us in that sense. And so this is where the back through time, there's like these different things that they might interact with, which includes on a very personal level, because your DNA might be related or connected somehow to some of these beings. And it gets pretty wild in that sense. But then like how we were just talking about the Schumann resonance and the sun sound. And those are two things that we integrate into our products. And when we're talking to our patent attorney, who is a man who managed Boeing's portfolio for 7 years, happened to mention that they do put Schumann resonators on the spacecraft because the astronaut health starts going down if they don't have it. Like they said, and this is where it kind of matches the little gray story, because he's saying that how our DNA starts to unwind if we don't have this Schumann resonance close to us in space. And then that kind of goes into the more esoteric tales of what the Great Origin was. It was like this human species that deviated too far from its origin planet. Its DNA started unwinding, and then they start coming back to places where it kind of may have originated for them to try to extend, their genetic makeup and such. And you keep hearing this story over and over from just independent places. It's kind of, you start wondering, like, and especially when you get into physics that go into like faster than light travel and potentialities, it's like you are kind of dealing with time then as we know it. So those kind of things start becoming less outlandish, you could say.
Yeah, definitely. And based on my experiences, we seem like we are energy beings from what I've seen, and the sun is some kind of nexus for all that. I think it's some kind of weird angelic light jellyfish god. Some kind of thing. I don't know what it is. But it thinks it's alive.
No,
I always see those weird videos of square UFOs supposedly doing stuff with it, which, I mean, they look like they could be legit. I mean, I don't know, but, I've seen some of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of strange phenomena around the sun. If you really spend time to look at some of those camera feeds, and for the longest time, like the only one was like the Vatican satellite. Like the Vatican's the only one that was staring at the sun for a long time in terms of the public. But some of these feeds, there's some stuff that's very hard to explain. I mean, you could try to say, oh, this is a plasma vortex of some kind that's creating this sort of standing wave, which may be true, could be. But we don't know. It's like no one went there and verified it, so we don't absolutely know that that's what's going on. But then there's other stuff where it just looks like a UFO, like we've seen, like these UFOs, but moving through the sun. So it's like, and I think that those out there who call themselves scientists, who aren't really looking at this at this point, are really being dogmatic. They're being religious. They're not being analytical. They're not being pragmatic because they have no proof. They haven't disproved their hypothesis. And at this point, there's so much evidence and so many credible sources, that have said, like, we don't know what these are. And like, including the ones that they look up to, like the government. All of the governments have said, we don't know exactly what all of these things are. But for some reason, there's some people just think they know better than the world, apparently. And that's why I don't get offended at skeptics. I'm just kind of like, dude, you're just not that informed. And I understand the system is set up to where you can't take time, maybe.
I've seen some of those like Republicans going crazy about UFOs lately, like Marco Rubio and Tucker Carlson and all this stuff. UFOs. It's like, dude, we've been doing this for decades or centuries or whatever. And you're like, UFOs, we got to get into this. Oh my God, UFOs. It's like, you're just figuring this out.
Yeah,
you're going crazy about it.
Yeah, and I do think that somewhere behind the scenes, like someone's being told more about the stuff that we've all talked about, like the TR3s and stuff like that. Like someone got shown, oh, look, a TR3 exists. And now the Congress people are like, what, we have that? It's like, yeah, and guess what? There's probably Russian versions now, too. Oh, no, yeah. Russian versions.
Chinese versions.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee that's what's going on right now. Meanwhile, the controllers are like, yes, buy more. keep doing what we told you to do.
We're just foreign nations, not aliens, probably.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I keep saying. Everyone's talking about space, and it is kind of like the next, era of pioneering, like that we saw in the Western movement to make this country here in America. It's like the same thing's about to happen in space, and everyone's gearing up for that. And that's where like everyone's saying, oh, they're trying to depopulate everyone. No, they kind of need more people. And they need more people to do that, to go in space. And technically, they need most of those people to make the robots to go to space. So that's just pragmatic. You gotta remember, these people in charge aren't idealists. Okay, they're trying to keep their power. So you can't look at it like, oh, they need to save humanity. No, they're not going to do that. Because even if you can see, even if you give someone, like you say, like, here's everything you want, some people aren't going to take it. They're not going to believe you. They're going to go against you anyway. So it's like you can't control everyone like this. But when you look at like the logical progression of like just industry, like the next logical progression of industry as it relates to space is going to be this pioneering kind of thing.
Well, here's one, and then of course I know Jay will want to add in soon. I see a lot lately with different. I know exopolitics; they're always saying crazy stuff, but sometimes there's truth in there. Not everything's crazy, but yeah, they do run wild sometimes. I think on many levels. But
Mhm.
as far as I know, we had Lynn Caston on, and he has this book called Dark Fleet, and basically it alludes that or he seems pretty convinced that the Nazis had a meeting with some kind of reptilians or something like that, and that basically they were still in Antarctica. And I know in conspiracy and paranormal and UFOs and all that stuff, they go crazy about Antarctica. They think there's something there that's really running the show that may, be linked to Nazis or reptilians or whatever. And maybe there is. I don't know. I've never been there. Probably never will go there. But I'm curious, what does Jerry Avalos think about that?
So, well, I mean, personally, um, I've had certain contacts with some people that, for all rights and purposes, they had no reason to lie to me. That talked about the progression of the Nazis in South America after World War II, and then even splinters of those different Nazi groups. So not like all of them are still like boot clicking Hitler heilers, um, but there has been this certain progression and a fork. Um, and then some, and there is a lot of weirdness about the South Pole. Like I can't say I know all the answers there, but I'd say like just from this outside point of view too, there's been so much weirdness around it. You have to consider something, you know, outside the normals going on there. Because like how, for instance, I forget right now which election it was. I want to say it was maybe Obama's re-election. Like Biden was down there for months for like, and they wouldn't tell us why. And there's a bunch of other people from all these other countries and like their heads of state were down there for some reason. And so it's like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're not looking at ice melting. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't buy that. This doesn't make any sense. So some of these connections may not be as outlandish as people think, because yes, it's like once again, like we talk so much has been talked about over centuries now of little grays and reptilians. So it's like if you have this story over and over again, and like even in my personal experiences, yeah, I could say yes, I think there's reptilians, and I've ran into some of these things you'd call reptilians in different experiences. So it's like, and so it seems that they're there. And so to me, it doesn't necessarily sound that outlandish that some of these esoteric groups have done that. And the Nazis definitely were deep into esoteric, lore. And so that's been pretty much proven by a lot of different researchers. I think even mainstream kind of acknowledges that. And so in that sense, when you look into that, like, yes, a lot of them talk about serpent beings, or they talk about these reptilian kind of lords and stuff like that. It's like, yes, that is
Yeah.
true. And whether you our viewers believe it or not, they believe it. And this is what they're talking about, and this is what they do. And that's one of the things that always has to be considered.
And yes, I've had a reptilian experience. And yes, I was partying. We don't have to go into details. It was Halloween night. It was one of those fear and loathing situations in Georgia. And
Bats.
I've talked about it. I've talked about it before. I was with my brother and this other dude who was this overweight guy named Greg, and my brother's name is Greg is too. Doesn't matter that he was overweight, but the reason I said that is because I'm overweight. But the point is, he was doing crazy diet pills, and anyway, I had seen some reptilian beings, and they didn't, but my brother saw red eyes in the woods and some other stuff, and the dude on the diet pills went nuts and tried to drive the truck into the lake with us in it and kill us for no reason. So that night I saw these beings, and they were kind of like hologram, like something like jokingly like you would see in Star Wars, like the little projector or something.
Yeah.
They were over a lake, and they were big, and I remember going, "Oh my God, is that fallen angels? Am I seeing the devil?" And that was my thought process. But they were saying positive stuff like "I love you," dance, sing, write. I was like, "What is this, like Deepak Chopra? What the hell is going on here?" But anyway, it was a weird night. I know there's something to reptilian things. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna say they're all evil because that's
exactly.
genocidal talk. You shouldn't do
Mhm.
that with any kind of race. But
Exactly.
they reminded me, like I have these Mayan oracle cards, and they have wood glyphs on them, and they're like kind of like tarot, but oracle cards or whatever. But they have the gods, and that's what it reminded me of, like Mayan weird,
Mhm.
or like maybe they had
Exactly.
headdresses. One was kind of tall, looked reptilian. I thought it had snakes for hair, or like Medusa or something, but I really don't know. Maybe that was some kind of ornamentation, or maybe it was really snakes for hair. I don't know. But there was a hydra, and this is stuff that I've never seen anywhere else. Weird stuff, but maybe it's archetypal stuff from the subconscious. I don't know, but they were definitely weird, and I'll never forget them. And there's times where I just think about them. It's like, do those things know that I'm thinking about them? Do they do something to me? And I've had UFO stuff all my life over my homes and stuff. I don't remember being taken or anything, but definitely there's something to the reptilian thing for sure. And plus, it's cool to think about. Imagine a planet where dinosaurs didn't croak, they didn't die. Would they evolve into ripped? Probably. So, I mean, who's to say? Some think some here didn't die and maybe did
Yeah,
that. So, who knows? But there's all kinds of weird, cool reptilian stuff for sure.
yeah,
no,
absolutely.
no doubt
And,
of it.
and like you mentioned, it's like when we're talking about a race, it's like a race isn't all one way, generally speaking.
Yes.
And yeah, and for myself, personally and professionally, that has ran the gamut of experiences in terms of very positive reptilian experiences and some very negative. And same goes for Grays and pretty much most of them. Like like it's like nothing's really been exclusive in that sense. Because over time, there's done a lot of sort of paranormal support for people. So beyond just like investigating, because we don't really do investigations most of the time. Like places where we go, like they know something is there and they just need it gone. And so we're not there to gather evidence. We're just there to make it better. And then other people have maybe gone through something very traumatic and have no one to talk to about it, and no way to kind of adjust course. And so that's a lot of things that we do in terms of our my wife and I's metaphysical services at the Hollow Tree. We do a lot. We found that there's a big need for that. There's a lot of people have had experiences, even positive ones, because positive ones can leave you almost depressed later because you're like, I want to get back to that, seeing that entity again, or knowing that there's something else out there. I don't want to go back to my work in my cubicle. That stuff happens too. And so I think this is going to be something in the future too for people, like you guys too, that you might find that might be part of your profession at some point too for a lot of people, because it'll be more accepted. More people will be able to talk to someone, and who they're going to talk to. Are they going to talk to the therapist who's probably going through the same thing as they are? You know what I mean? Or people who've been researching it, dealt with it themselves, dealt with other people dealing with themselves, and managed not to make those people have a worse time in their life. You know what I mean? Because yeah,
We
that's the
should
whole
welcome the visitors here with an open heart. The visitors have come all the way to our planet. V for visitors, V for victory.
no,
I was
you
looking at this. There's
got,
this crazy collectible toy of a V doll on eBay. It's like $300. I didn't buy it. I would love to, but I'm not. But
yeah.
it you take the face off and there's like a
Oh yeah.
reptoid.
For sure.
I love that stuff. It was some good stuff. But well, let's get Jay some of his little slimy questions in there. I know he's got a couple.
Yeah, I do. Actually, I want to keep going with the reptilian thing. What I can discern from it, and it's tough with all the disinformation that's out there. And I've been researching this since I was like 11, and I'm 54 now. So I'll let you do the math. But it's not. It hasn't been an ongoing thing. It's I just keep looking at it when I have time. And early on, the reports that I was getting was that the Greys are good, the Reptilians are good, and that certain other groups were bad. And it changes every like decade or so. Then it's like the Greys are bad, and then the Reptilians are bad, and these other guys are good, and so on and so forth. So it's hard to discern what's the truth. But the most recent reports that I've been reading and looking at indicates that there's the Greys, the insects, and the Reptilians are all working together with our government or within secretive aspects of our government with a hidden evil agenda. And then there's another group that calls themselves either the Anunnaki or the Pleiadians, they have several different names, who are working with other parts of our government, like specifically the Navy, to fight against the bad group that's in the already well hidden in our government. So it's hard to discern what is the actual truth. And like you said, Jerry, I'll guarantee you there's some people in our government that know, if not all, a good bit of that information. And the question is, how do people figure that out? And I've been trying for, since the 70s to figure this out, and it's still blowing my mind.
Yeah, and I can definitely echo like what you're saying there in terms of, and to me, when it's kind of like politics as usual in a sense. And even for myself, for those who may have not caught some of my other interviews, I guess I would be classified as a military abduction experiencer. And in that, what I thought was a type of game that I was playing for a long time in this sort of astral state or altered state, I guess you can say, was you would see some of this kind of politics that goes on, and so hearing and from my own experience, what I saw is like, yes, there's these different races that will participate with certain groups to do these certain agendas. Yes, and they're not all on the same agenda. And it's like, and it's not all of the races agree with what they're doing with some of them that would be participating. And especially when it comes to like the Greys, because because there's also, it seems like other researchers would attest to this too, is that there's almost like a drone biomechanical version of Greys that you can kind of buy. And they're almost like robots. And so like there's these robot versions versus ones that actually have like a soul in them and things like that. And it gets very convoluted and very esoteric, but once again, you have so many similar stories coming out that you have to consider it. And to me, from what I've seen on the personal level, in terms of some of those experiences related to this and extraterrestrial, was that ultimately there are these sort of like even higher consciousness beings, but before you get to like God or something, but there's some other ones that are even more intelligent, that aren't really like peacekeepers. But at the same time, there's an equilibrium that that is guided towards. Okay, and so that always seems to be in play too, because I've seen things where like these different groups might be fighting, and then these things from this other dimension come in, and then they just stop. So it's just very weird stuff like that. And so hearing these different stories from different researchers about this, it really doesn't surprise me any, because some of those experiences, because I didn't think my experiences were real. I thought I was just having some kind of dream experience or just something, because sometimes on these bases there would be these different beings, and some of them are like, I haven't really heard other people describe either. There's some of them are kind of hard to describe, but then I didn't realize later that that's an actual military base. And not only was it an actual military base I'm describing, it's Edwards Air Force Base, where like kind of now everyone knows has a lot of ties to a lot of the secret space stuff. And this is something that I've been, because I started talking because it seemed to me that something was putting me in danger if I didn't, because of something that I knew. I didn't know what that was, and so that's one reason why I even started talking and sharing my story online about that kind of stuff. And I understand now why, because it was tied to this place at Edwards. And so since that time, like I think it was probably like 2006, I guess it was. That was probably when I first started saying, "Hey, I went through this experience. Check out Edwards Air Force Base." Like that. Then from there, things really kind of snowballed, you could say, in terms of that. But so yeah, and in terms of how do you know, I mean, it's something you kind of have to just really discern for yourself. I mean, even just like every day, it's like, like right now, especially in mainstream, you have this political show that's going on. You know what I mean? And so it's the same thing where it's like, you gotta remember, like both red and blue are in a clique that you're probably not in, because you don't have like, maybe some of your audience does have hundreds of millions of dollars in their bank, but unless you have like hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, you're not these guys. You're not these people. No matter how much you think you are, you're not. And they don't care about the rest of everyone else. And so I go a whole diatribe about that. Like I told people like a year ago from right now, I knew, like I told them, like a year from now, COVID's magically going to disappear, because it works into the political propaganda that no administration can have a pandemic going on for a year, be it real or not. because it reflects badly on them, and they're going to get thrown out of office. So, kind of pure political strategy, and then you see it. Yes, it is. And so it's kind of like the same thing on that level. So like hearing that some of these esoteric groups might be battling this other evil esoteric group, yeah, I mean, it does happen. And even, I mean, I've seen some things that people wouldn't believe happen, and I've only seen like a little tiny scratch of the surface. And the people who've been down below say like mostly what these groups with all these big machines and guns are worried about are someone going rogue with those. It's not like then, like if they wanted to kill everyone, they could already a bunch of times. But the problem is a person who wants to do that, and I call them earth crackers because there are some earth crackers that exist. Like these James Bond villains do exist.
Yeah.
And so that apparently does happen. And so yeah, I think that so we hear stories about like these Pleiadians working with this person or this head of state to do this, maybe, because you have to consider how they come to power. What did they use? How did they get there? Did it, especially if it's more mind manipulation than hardware. So like how you're saying, Jeff, about even like with your reptilian encounter about, this guy wants to just drive into the lake for some reason. Like those kind of things is a signature of some of these esoteric elements or these extraterrestrial or sometimes you could say call them spiritual elements too, because that's usually the easiest way to mess with us is through our mind. So
yeah. And who's to say, the other things weren't there. The red eyes my brother saw could have been something else. One thing I've heard a lot lately too is from different people that Bigfoot encounters, they've had some, and I've heard this from 2 or 3 different people, and they kind of invoked Jesus and they went away. And of course, this was with a Cherokee guy that's been on Scott Starr. And I was like, you really invoke Jesus? I guess it surprised me because he was native, but he does. Yeah. And I've also noticed with Marilyn Evans and stuff, she's a part of the pagan community. She had great things to say about Christ. So, because I asked her a question like, does everybody like hate Christ like the Viking show, in the pagan, when you go to these pagan places? She's like, no. So I've noticed natives and pagans embracing that Christ consciousness, which I think, and from what I've seen, there's truth to that based on seeing weird shining beings leave my house. They probably have some kind of nirvana or Christ consciousness or whatever. But the thing is, just the fact that the Bigfoot, I don't think all Bigfoots are demonic, but there may be some that are, and that gets rid of them. Like there may be, like he said, there may be some that are, have they want to do human harm, and he said some are under grace. So I was like, what? So I guess they've come to the light. And I've heard that from some different people, but that's interesting to think about with Sasquatch as well. No matter what you think, if they're physical, which Jay thinks are physical only, of course, I think they're multi-dimensional. But anyway, they just some strange things that he had said. It's not really strange, but just it's neat to think about that perhaps there are, I know there's Bigfoot or these beings, but the fact that they could be under grace and that there may be some that aren't that friendly and that could be considered demonic, that you could cast them away. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up though, because this is kind of where like it might be like somewhat of unpopular opinion, but I would wager on this one is that it has less to do with your iconography than your own solid belief system. So like when someone believes something strongly, that physically does something to your body. And that's what I think these beings can see. It's your electromagnetic field intensifies, oscillates something to where we're able to then actually act upon them without punching them. And this is something that comes from my own experience in terms of dealing with some of these entities. And you'll see it even with a shamanic practitioner. How can a shamanic practitioner go and pull something out and then something will crack in the room? You know what I mean? This is the type of phenomenon I'm talking about. And before Jesus was even in people's mind in Native America, they were doing that. And so I kind of do take even personal offense sometimes when I hear Native Americans using Catholicism or Christianity. It's like they're the ones that did it to you. You know what I mean? And they're polluting your mind. And like I said, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I'm sorry. This is, if you look at religion as a political tool, it will make more sense, especially Christianity. Because what happened when Christianity was established? It wasn't established till Constantine decided to change over the Roman Empire to it, therefore solidifying all the power under him, because before him there was the Temple of Athena, there's a Temple of Apollo. All of these had homages, all of these had districts that they control. But then once Constantine did that, no more. Now it's the emperor, now it's the pope. And so that was the biggest empire, still is one of the biggest, most powerful things around. And it's like, as we know, their intentions aren't always the best. You know what I mean? And so, yes, I do think that these religions are meant to circumvent our own spiritual power. So they're using Jesus. That's great.
I got a Geraldo question. I got a Geraldo question for you. So, what do you personally think about Jesus? Do you think is there anything to it to you personally? Is there Christ consciousness? Do you think that's more like Christ consciousness or nirvana? You look at it kind of like a spiritual point of view, or what do you think about the actual being Jesus?
I think at this point, it doesn't really matter. This being is real. You know what I mean? It kind of doesn't matter what I think about Jesus. This Jesus is real because it does things. It perpetuates actions here. People base their opinions on it. Same like because we can't confirm. We weren't there when George Washington was here, for instance, but we all believe he's there. We don't know. It's almost the same thing at that point. This person is real. And then if you look on the more esoteric metaphysical level, all these potentialities exist. Like they can't unexist. So that means in some reality, it went exactly like the Bible says. But that also means in other realities, it didn't. And it's probably somewhere in between. Because there's also realities where we're all like talking sheep and stuff like that. Because evolution might change. And this is kind of stuff that's even being postulated in modern physics about the multiverse and these different potentialities, et cetera, et cetera. So there's tangible things that can be demonstrated about this. And then when you look, once again, at the religious overlays, and this gets even into the more of the esoteric studies of things like the Anunnaki, and where the origins of these stories come from, because then you always find some kind of insidious origin. You know, it's not like there is a first-hand account even of Jesus's life. Considering all of the records in Roman history, why is there no records of this? You know what I'm saying? If it was such a big deal, where are the Roman records? You know what I mean? And why wouldn't the Vatican at this point share them? You know what I mean? If they were suppressed during the Roman, these are just logical questions. And if this enrages some people, I'm sorry, that should be.
We have a caller. It's 1-800-Jesus. I'm putting him through right now. I'm kidding.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that Jesus isn't good, that Jesus doesn't have power, because like I said, all these potential realities exist. And so it's about,
I think we're energy beings, and I try to think about this 3D and 5D stuff. Like I saw some meme that said something about if you don't get your act together, you'll have to stay in 3D or whatever, like the David Wilcock stuff or whatever. but anyway, that's a whole nother area. But especially with Q and him, my God, what is happening? But anyway, I think we're these beings, but maybe there are levels that you can attain, and maybe some people do kind of stay back who are more, I don't know, whatever, violent or whatever. But I would think that moving forward of these beings, if you are these energy beings, would be kind of like nirvana or Christ consciousness or the force. I don't know. I've heard the ascension word. I try not to say that word too much. I want to sound like a hippie. But anyway, as far as, maybe there is. I don't know. They all say this is a school. I'm like, oh, goodness, this is a school. What school is it? That's what Pat Horn said, that this is a school. If you survive it, you will get your new clothes, your new body. So you make it out, you get a new body. He also said Jack, when he croaked, has a new body and speaks in well binary. And like the well songs, I don't know, like I said, but that's kind of Christianity too. You get a body of light. You made it. Here's your body of light. Well, here you go, Arthur.
Well, it was good learning for myself. I mean, because this is, I've had a lot of experiences with spirits and people who have passed on. And I've interacted with them on many levels, and tangible ways. You know what I mean? Not just like there's things that were verified and, good stuff came of it. And from what I've seen, which is really encouraging to me, is that there is the truth to this eternal life thing. Like there is it seems to me that there is an eternal place that all of us call home, and we would recognize it. And that's what you want to connect to. You don't necessarily need any other entity to do that. And that's one of the things that we espouse. You know, it is, in a sense, your higher self, your own spiritual purity, because then you're right next to quote unquote God. And you need no other step between that. And so
That's
that part of home is within, we know it somewhere. And so like in the idea of having, Jack have this other splintered, in a sense, consciousness of different things and being right with it at the same time. Yeah, that seems to happen. And it seems to me like things with pets, like seem to be a lot of times like friends of ours from this eternal life that kind of use that as their avatar. And that seems to be the case with even a lot of consultations I've had with people over the years, and things like that. And I think that's really encouraging, because it's like, to me, that means when a new animal comes in, that means, like help from your eternal place has come, and that's why it is like a person dying, how people try to dismiss, oh, it's just a pet. No, it's probably a person, this is their avatar that they came back to. I know that sounds crazy, and that is type of faith, yes, because it's like hard to prove.
I've heard it. Oh, he was 16. That's a long life. Well, that was 16 years he was with me. That was a long time. Now he's not here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
exactly.
but the dog thing. So you think they're still? Do you think we're gonna see them when we croak?
Oh yeah. I mean, to me, that's like guaranteed. I mean, they're like, and that's one of the things that I tell people too. And when we do consultations, like with area clearings and such, most people when they leave, they usually see their people there, and they're gone. It's just a relative small amount that gets stuck, and then most of them kind of cross over and come back. And so this is kind of where, if you have a visitation from like your grandfather, they're probably not stuck here. They probably just came back to help at that point. And because to them, time is something different. It's like, it's not the way we look at it. And so that tends to be the case more often than someone's just like actually stuck to you. Sometimes it happens, but and especially in the case of our friends, be they two legs, 4 legs, or whatever, they tend to do that. They tend to come back and help when needed, and some of them might even come back. And that's kind of, I've heard that a lot more with animals than people. But we've seen the stories of people who remember they came back and they've proved it. So it's not like
hope they don't force us to come back.
I agree with you on that, Jared. It happens
again. I don't want to be a fetus. I don't want to go to school.
You say that now, but
but when you're in heaven, you're like, I want to be a fetus again.
I know.
But go ahead, Jay. I know you got something.
Yeah, about us seeing our pets when we die. It happens in the other direction as well. I had a cat that in college, one of my buddies, they found his cat in a McDonald's dumpster. It's just giant fluff ball. It's a Maine Coon female cat, and they couldn't keep it, so they gave it to me, and she lived for 20 years. I moved back up into Maryland after 13 years down in Georgia, and the cat started getting sick, and she flopped over one day and just could not move. So I took her to the vet and found out that she had a mass inside her abdomen, and the choice was either expensive chemo and other type of invasive surgeries to try to keep her another 3, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, maybe at the most, or let her pass and move on. And it was just a hard decision. So I said, well, let me think about it for a day, and then I'll make the right decision. So I'm sitting at this restaurant, and one of my friends who's a waiter there says, hey, we got this cat that nobody wants. We can't get rid of it. Are you interested? And I'm like, that's weird you had to ask that, but I'm thinking right now, I have my Maine Coon is about to die, and I have to decide whether to kill her or make her suffer for 8 more months until she dies of renal failure or whatever. So he's like, okay. So another day or so went by, and I went back to the restaurant, and I said, tell you what, I've decided my cat is really bad. She's got to be put down to be humanely put to sleep so she's not suffering. I'll take that cat in a week. So a week goes by, and I go back to the restaurant, and I'm eating dinner, and he calls his dad to go run home and bring the cat over to us. And he and his mom are working at their way to this restaurant, and the father's pulling up. So we all go out to the back of the restaurant, and this big red F-150 pickup pulls up by us. And this little same size fluff ball as when I got her the first time As soon as she saw me, she recognized me and tried to jump through the glass and smacked her face. She's like, oh, kind of stunned a little bit. The guy was trying to hold this little kitten and park and drive with one hand and roll his window down, and she literally jumped out of the car into my hands.
Nice.
Like she recognized me, which was really strange. I'm like, this is weird. And then she looked exactly like the previous body that I just had turned into ashes. I get her home. I put her down. She says hi to my other cat that's there. He recognized her. She recognized him. She's like, hey, what's up? And she ran right to the food. She didn't search for the food. She ran directly to where the food was. Like she knew where it was already. And then from then on, I started seeing exact same behavior patterns, exact same habits. She liked to play. She was a little bit more ornery. She, if you pet her too much, she would scratch you. Whereas her other body, she was a little more mellow. And I guarantee you, 100%, I'm convinced that she was resurrected. And I still have her. She's at my friend's house right now while we're getting the move on. But it happened. This cat was reincarnated, and I don't know if it's a soul buddy or someone that's been following me my whole life, but I've had cats my whole life. I've never ever had the same exact breed of cat twice in a row, except for this one cat. And I guarantee you, it's the same soul. It's the same person or whatever's in that body.
Yeah, that doesn't sound outlandish to me at all. I mean, and even though one hadn't even passed yet, it's like this multiplicity concept makes more sense, especially those who have done a lot of astral traveling and projection. It's like you can kind of see even on that level how it's possible, let alone from this higher spiritual plane. So yeah, that's really cool, and I hope that story is encouraging for everyone else too, in terms of feeling lost and because it's true, and I found for myself, it's like it's good to process our grief when we can, because if we get stuck there, it blocks our spiritual communication channels with some of those friends or our relatives. That's the most tragic thing I've seen as on the professional level, is those who are just so stuck in their grief about their past, say, grandfather or mother, and it's like if they can just realize that they're not really gone, they'll be able to talk to them because they're right there. And like I say, don't believe your mind then. Ask for something physical to happen that is beyond chance. You know what I mean? And it's kind of easy in a lot of ways when people dismiss it, because there's so many possibilities. Like, what is the possibility of that cat having those exact similarities, that exact day, et cetera, et cetera. That's the odds against that are huge. I would take the bet against that any day.
Yeah, it's astronomical. And I'm thinking the reason why they couldn't get rid of the younger version of her body was because the soul hadn't transgressed into the new container yet. Aliens call our bodies containers a lot of the time. So I'm thinking while she was in her transition phase, and it took a week before I picked her up after I had the older body euthanized. And they said it was like night and day, that the cat was different when they gave her to me. Before she was kind of mean and ornery. So maybe she had a different soul in it, or no soul, and it was just an instinctual animal. Yeah, survival. But when I got it, I mean, this thing was like, it couldn't wait to get out of that truck to get into my hands.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. And see, things like that, and this is kind of where I say, like, and Jeff knows he's involved in the back with some of this parody, a cartoon they were making called Camp Human, or this universe Camp Human, because I came up with that name at one point because that's how I describe what we're experiencing, because it's kind of like camp. Like when you're there, you're whining about the food, it's uncomfortable, all this other stuff, but then you go
make many friends, yeah,
you're like, oh, that was fun, I got to do this, I almost died at this one point. Right. And I, like I said, that was my own observation over years of interacting with different people, and some people have crossed over, and yeah, that's kind of how I describe what life is, and it is for experience, and you can call it a school, you can call it anything you want, because this is kind of where on its purity of, like, because one can't really define God, so to speak, you know what I mean, and we're all part of that. And we're all part of that God understanding itself subjectively on some level. And then you hear, I think was it Timothy Leary said some almost the exact same thing when this research about acid. And so this is kind of where you start running into each other, physics, metaphysics, psychedelics. We all start talking about, wow, everything's kind of like wavy energy. Even like one of the latest CERN discoveries, like latest CERN discovery seems that we're all wavy energy. It's like these guys are just doing mushrooms. But yeah, and so yeah, your story about your cat definitely is a really cool one, and yeah, like I said, it's like the odds against that kind of experience.
Never ever really happened. It really wouldn't.
Yeah.
I want to let Jeff take over. I've got to run to the restroom, so I'll be back in a second.
Oh, number 2.
Yeah, no, number 1. I've been drinking too much water and lemonade.
It happens. Okay, it happens. But what was I going to say? Remote viewing. When I think I first came across remote viewing, I got these weird little Courtney Brown books like called Cosmic Explorers and Cosmic something else. I don't really know how I feel about him. I don't know him, but he works at Emory University as like a doctor or something. I know he ignored me when I tried to get him on the show. He just like read it and didn't say anything, which could be for a various number of reasons. I didn't really care too much. It was just it happened. It happens. But my point is, I read these books a long time ago. And I still have them, I think, but in it, he has remote viewers, and they're basically openly talking about remote viewing reptilian bases on Earth. So it's like pretty weird that he's so confident in a doctor and claims that that's basically what they're doing in these books, that there's bases and there's reptilians in them. And who knows, they could be full of it. I don't know. Maybe there really are. Maybe there are. I don't know. I say that a lot with paranormal and all this stuff. I don't know. But it's a weird book. But what are you familiar with him at all? What do you think about him? Any opinion on him?
I mean, he's a genuine remote viewer, yes, and by all rights and purposes, he presents his information pretty well. He is, you could say, a little spacey, but I think he doesn't necessarily, from what I could tell, he doesn't seem to have bad intentions. Like some of them, you have to question. But like how when you go into remote viewing, though, the actual protocols, you have to be able to verify your target in terms of like the SRI protocols and on certain levels of professional opportunities. Because believe it or not, there are people who are hiring psychics on a very professional level, like not kind of like a woo-woo. It's like these are like suit people. I mean, because they can see the analytics behind it, and it's worth it to them, the money. And so that's the thing about remote viewing. And so those who aren't familiar, I'll just do a quick rundown. It was a technique developed by our government to where they can take anybody, any soldier, give them an alphanumeric sequence, and get some kind of viable intuitive reconnaissance on the target. So say if they did want to look at a Russian base, they would give this random soldier alphanumeric thing and just say, write whatever comes down. Just start writing. I don't care what you write about. Just write, draw, do this, and that. And so they would see a correlation to what their target was. And now in terms of the professionals, this is where you delineate your data. So like say what really kind of defines the remote viewing protocols is a double-blind target, and some kind of documentation, and then being able to verify that target. And that's like a rounded definition of that in terms of what would be accepted on the academic level. And so in that sense, you have a paper essentially that you're doing, and you're doing an ideogram, which is kind of, some people might call it automatic writing. So you're essentially just letting your pen move around. And then on one side, if you're thinking something like, oh, it's cold right now, I want to write it's cold right now on the right side of my paper. But then if I'm just doodling and this and that, and then I feel, now I'm like, skates. Like, why is skates coming up? And then so I'm going to write skates on the other side because there's seemingly no logic behind it. And so you keep doing that, as long as you want, and you'll find that there's going to be correlations to your target. And sometimes it's uncanny how accurate it can be. Most people, when they start off, and I've done some series of remote viewing classes, and I am planning on doing some more pretty soon. That I'll tell, most people actually kind of see in this like broken fractal kind of way. So like I'll bring in a target for the students, And say like one of the times it was like this thing that holds batteries together, and so it was in this little box. And so a lot of the students, they were drawing these circular motions, or they were drawing circles with angles, and I'd show them, see how you guys all drew this versus the last target, which was a location, and everyone was kind of drawing the more step ladder thing that they saw on a railing. And so you guys weren't drawing circles, you were drawing more right angles. And you see how, without knowing, all of you have just kind of sunk up on the actual target. And so that's the stuff you train as a remote viewer. And if you do it enough, it's like, you can get very uncanny results.
Is it kind of like you trust your imagination and mind's eye and just kind of run with it in a relaxed state, and then you're like, damn, is that kind of how it is, sort of?
Yeah, you want to acknowledge what's going on in your mind. So it's like, so that way what is your imagination versus what's not. And so that's kind of where someone says, well, I don't really have a good imagination, or I don't see anything at all. Well, that's kind of where you can just start imagining. Like, okay, we'll start imagining yourself out on a lake and you're watching a bird fly. So just kind of, what is that bird flying? You're going to put this on your right side if it's the analytical side, right? So you're gonna, on your paper, so you write that. But then let's say you're drawing your bird, and then it's like gears. It's like, write gears on the other side. I mean, so like there's always a way to tap into it. And that's kind of why you'd want, like a teacher or take a class or something like that to get that kind of one-on-one to tune that. But all of us have it. All of us have intuition. All of us are empathic. They're called mirror neurons. And they're there. They're in most primates. They haven't proven them in humans yet, but what we're seeing is almost like humans don't need them. We almost kind of have this like meta neuron that happens in relation to empathy. And this is something that I like to follow the academic studies on that, because it's something that seems to correlate directly with certain prowess in different sort of metaphysical applications. But that's essentially like how you're saying, if you're imagining something, or you just let your mind go and you're just documenting it without judgment and just let it go. You know what I mean? And over time you start feeling the differences. And there's even techniques that you can start using, and little devices to help refine that, to where it's like your mind versus not, et cetera, et cetera.
Definitely. We're all pieces of the God blob, and the God blob is going to eat itself like a snake eating its tail, and we're going to go back and we're going to turn into the amoeba. I just hope, do we retain our individual consciousness, or do it's going to eat us like the Borg? But there's weird stuff. I know shamanism says that that the Great Spirit's exploring through us on the web of life, the shamanic web of life. So it's kind of like webcams for God.
Exactly. Yes. And I've had people ponder, well, then what's God perceiving? Well, then we're the reflection of what God would be perceiving, because it's like, if it's existing, that's you're saying, it kind of eats itself in that sense.
If you look at Jay's head, it looks like one of those mouse balls that go inside a mouse. When he turns sideways, it's like the mouse ball. They still have those, right? You put in the mouse, the computer mouse.
Exercise ball.
Wow.
But Jay, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, on the remote viewing, I have to agree with everything he said about it. I was in a school that was to help people with either emotional or learning disabilities, and we had a couple different like demonstrations come in. One was like, what do you call it? They hooked you up with some machine, and you could like target certain organs and make them operate or not operate. And I forget what they call that. That was like a new thing. But then they also had this guy come in. It blew my mind. He put his hand under the table and made a metal can on top of the desk move. And then he taught us all how to do a remote viewing kind of thing. And Jeffrey was asking how it works. And it's like, he gave us, like you said, a target, and we just would close our eyes, and you could like almost, I don't know if it was imagine the room or you're actually in the room, but you get sort of like the Predator view, in the movie The Predator, where he sees all those people in infrared. It's kind of like that, but with no color. And he's just different, like pixels make the shapes of what's in that room. And we all drew what was supposed to be in that room. Most of us got it right. A couple of them didn't. But it's real. And I don't continue to look for weird things. I'll do it in the room that I'm in. I'll turn the lights off and I'll close my eyes and I'll try to aim at a certain furniture in the room, and then open my eyes to see if I'm looking at it. And a lot of times I'm right on. Sometimes I'm off. Sometimes I don't get it. But most of the time I can like close my eyes and visualize in the room what's there, and like I can walk through the room without bumping into stuff. So it's a weird phenomenon. I don't know how we're able to do it. We must be picking up some sort of wave or energies coming off of everything in the room that is getting into our brain, like you said, with some kind of metaphysical neurons. But it's very cool. I mean, it'd be nice to have that as like a full-on 100% accurate all the time superpower.
Yeah. And you definitely can train those things. I mean, that's that type of heads-up display thing is one of the things I like to train myself. And one of the things that we like to put into perspective is that, like, right now, it's not really your eyes that are seeing. It's your mind that's interpreting what's going on there. Mm-hmm. And like how I'll give the example that all of our quote-unquote third eyes are working just fine. And how we can improve this is because we're not kind of going like this while we're watching each other, things like that, because we're technically kind of doing that. Like, we're not really still. You know what I mean? We're actually subtly kind of going like this. But our mind corrects our eyes to be able to read the page, because if it was just synced up like a laser, we'd be going like this while we're trying to read. And so when you recognize that part of things, it's kind of sometimes that like blows open this logic door that was blocked. And then all of a sudden, like, whoa, I can perceive a bunch of stuff. I can see sound. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, how does that happen? Yes.
I've actually seen sound before, as odd as that is.
Yeah, there's enough people who have experienced this to where it's like, it's obviously we're capable of it, and now it's finding the mechanism. And I think that's what we're all doing in our own way. And like I said, everyone's kind of is looking for we're looking for our answers, and we're finding enough commonality to kind of show that a lot of us are on the right track.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know how I was able. Well, I kind of do, and I kind of don't. It was at a Tangerine Dream concert at the Kennedy Center in Washington D.C. And I didn't have any illegal drugs, I promise. But I did drink 2 bottles of tequila, little 50 ml nips you get on the airplanes. I bought 3 of those with tequila that had the worm in it, and I bought 3 bottles of rum, same size, little 50 ml airplane bottles, and a 6-pack of Coke. And this was right after the Marine base in Iran got exploded by a van, explosive van. So security was pretty high, but I walked right through the Kennedy Center, no metal detectors. I had a backpack on my bag with Coke and liquor in it. Walked straight through, walked by their guards and everything. Finished my drinks while I was watching the concert, and I could literally see the sound coming out of the speakers, and it was like colored. It was almost like seeing pages of music. I'd see notes and things. It was like purple and red and blue, and it was really weird. And I'm like, this has got to be the mezcal worm, because I ate one of them just to see if there'd be any effect. And clearly there was, but maybe there's something in my brain that also allowed me to see the actual waves of music coming out of the speakers. It was the strangest thing ever. And so far, to my recollection, the best concert I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things I think that people kind of discount, like, oh, if there are substances involved, but it's like, how come these experiences exist, whether they are or they are not? And so so it really doesn't invalidate any of the experiences of my mind. And also, especially when it deals with stuff like alcohol, it's like, I mean, how drunk do you really have to get to really see different, like, hallucinate? Mm-hmm. And I've been really drunk before, and it's like, I mean, you don't really hallucinate.
And I wasn't that wasted. I mean, I drove from Potomac, Maryland to D.C. It's like a 30-minute drive, and I drank 2 of the tequila on the road. And while I was in the parking lot, I drank 1 of the bottles of rum. Then I went in with the rest of it and finished that in the concert. So it wasn't like I just sat there and pounded it right before. I mean, it was stretched over a 3 or 4 hour period. So I wouldn't say I was lit, but I was definitely intoxicated. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting there watching, notes come out of their speakers, and I'm going, wow, this is the best. And the coolest thing is the guy who opened up for them was Stuart Copeland from the Police. Oh, yeah. He opened up and played some stuff like some King Crimson stuff right before them. So I mean, I guess maybe that opened up my brain a little bit, because King Crimson, as you know, is extremely psychedelic, acid rock kind of music.
Yeah, and actually we share a teacher, Stuart and I, in drums for the Indian tabla. So and yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Alok Dutta is his name, and you can see like Alok's students. You can see pre-Alok and then post-Alok. It's pretty apparent. It's like and so especially with like Stewart, so I wouldn't doubt that some kind of transcendent element might come out, because that's kind of what we're taught. We're taught to get so used to different frequency of playing, so different time signatures moving around, that you end up really being able to move on any instrument. And like Stewart would be a good example of a person who could just move freely on this instrument. It would go out to the crowd and kind of really kind of synchronize that. And so I think, on that personal metaphysical level, I think that plays a huge factor for your experience there, more than the alcohol. You know what I mean?
And oddly enough, he didn't even play the drums.
Oh, really?
He didn't have a single drum. He played the guitar, and he had a machine behind him, that like a tape loop machine that played either drum tracks he laid down yesterday or the week before. And he was a one-man band. And I was like, wow, this guy was in the Police? Like, how come we don't think he's any good? He was fantastic by himself.
My favorite Tangerine Dream songs from Legend. I have seen the Mystics play there once or twice, but I knew they had I'm blowing it, but Loved by the Sun.
Love by the Sun. That's actually John Vangelis.
Yeah,
singing
it.
That's John Vangelis and John Anderson singing, yeah.
But it's still Tangerine Dream, isn't it?
No, that song is John Vangelis and John Anderson of Yes.
I think Tangerine Dream might have came up with that melody though, like
they may have wrote it, but John Vangelis is playing it, and John Anderson, the singer from Yes, is the one singing that.
Both of them. It's both of them. Yeah, that's what it says. It says him and Tangerine. It's both of them. That's from Legend though. You've seen that, right? That's one of my favorites. That's a good one.
That's in my DVD library. Absolutely.
That's a great one.
So, well, I got something I'm going to go back to. What you were talking about, your experiences with the military abductions in Edwards Air Force Base. Edwards, it seems to have a lot of history with the UFOs. You mentioned, a while back, and I'm wondering if you can expand on this, or if you know about this. Allegedly, this was back when it was known as Muroc Air Force Base, back in the 50s. Allegedly, there's two things that happened there. One is President Eisenhower, right after he was elected, 53, 52, whatever it was, he goes over to California for some sort of weekend convention and has a toothache and disappears for the whole weekend, and allegedly went to Muroc Air Force Base, now Edwards, to meet with the reptilians, insects, and grays. And that took over a 2 or 3 day period. Then he comes back and, he had a tooth abscess and whatever. And then also, later on, after the space race, and I forget, he's dead now. I can't remember his name, but he was one of the 11 guys that went to the moon. He was a video camera operator. He was in charge of the camera group that did all the test cameras and watching test flights and what have you. And they actually captured footage of a UFO coming down and landing, putting its gear down, guys getting out, and then some of our military people going on board and then flying away. And he actually filmed it, but he saw the footage. Are you aware of these two events?
I've heard of the Eisenhower one for sure, and that it could be plausible. I mean, because for myself, what seems to me like what I was involved with would be called the looking glass technology, I guess, because it did have to do with multiverse applications. That's a lot of what I was doing. I was looking into these potential realities and then trying to augment them to whatever the objective was. And that was where the heavy stuff went down, was over at that military base. And I didn't want to go there. It wasn't like it was like, by the time it got to that point, it wasn't fun. I mean, it was very traumatic, and there's a lot of things going on. And now hearing a story about something landing over there, and that doesn't surprise me, honestly, because I mean, I've been out there too, just to kind of observe after a while, like many years later. And if you go, and this is something for the audience, if you guys want to skywatch, you don't have to go to Edwards Air Force Base. I would highly suggest not going to the town around there. What you do is you go to the outskirt hills, Lake Isabella is a good landmark. You go out to the Kern River and Lake Isabella and just look up from those hills. You don't need any special equipment. I can almost guarantee you're going to see something moving that isn't a satellite. you'll be able to tell. And it's like they'll magically be coming and going from that direction, to Edwards Air Force Base. So there's only so many people that kind of sit there and stare at it. But if you do happen to have some fancy equipment, I'm pretty sure you catch something there. It's like, because I've been there and seen it very plainly. You can see these things. It's not even hard. And so to think that something might have landed like somewhere, yeah, it makes sense. And like from what I was seeing, if even a fraction of what I was involved with is like, really happened, it's like, yeah, no, there's some weird stuff that goes on there, because it was all about interacting with these different beings and like kind of like creating certain events to happen or not happen.
The really weird thing, though, to me is not that the UFOs landed there, but most of the bases that we have, the secret bases where they research this stuff, seem to be on that side of the country. So we got one place over here, is Wright-Patterson up in Ohio, which is where the foreign technology desk is, or the part of the foreign technology desk is, where if a Russian plane crashed in Nevada, that's where it would have gone in the 50s. Or if we were in World War II and we happened to, pick up a Luftwaffe jet or plane, we would have brought it to Ohio. Why are all of these? I mean, like, you've got Area 51, you've got Area S4, you've got Area 52, and those three places are all in the Nellis range. Then you've got like 2 or 3 places in California, a couple places in Washington and Seattle, and there's like Dugway, Dulce, which is in the center of the country. Why aren't they on the East Coast? Do you have an explanation for that?
Man, I'm not really sure on that one, but I know the industry over here, maybe just because the industry was set up that way over here, because I mean, especially in California, especially earlier in California's history, a lot of the economics was built around the military contractors. So besides just like the Army, the Navy, there a lot of NASA stuff was built here too. And so you've had this industry that's supporting all of this stuff around here. And I can imagine at one point it all would have been way cheaper than it would have been to be on the East Coast, especially when all of this started. Because like over here wasn't always some of the most expensive land in the world, but now it is. Especially out there in Edwards. I mean, even right now out there around Edwards is still relatively cheap land. And one of the things that I noticed that was kind of weird about Edwards, like just over the years now, because I mean, I'm from Southern California, have done many kind of vacations to different parks and all this other stuff, and drove by, at least a good amount of times. And it wasn't until one of the last times where it dawned on me, like, I've never seen any planes go in or out from there that didn't come from this small commercial runway on the edge of it. But like, you never see any other military craft flying in there, even at night. Like, I've drove by at night and you see no lights. And like, I'm not too far from one of the bases over here, and we see military planes all the time, like military vehicles. There's this regular patterns, things they do. But I don't know, something about Edwards, it's like, it's almost like there's some weird, like, mirage that's cast that kind of, you can't really see into it either, which wouldn't necessarily surprise me, because it's like, if there's this weird tech there, then yeah, you'd want to have some very, very advanced kind of defenses and cover.
Yeah, that actually makes more sense. I mean, the reason for Area 51 was that right before they put the base there, that's where they tested that's where the Trinity bomb site was, where they just tested the first weapon. And then, like I said, it's sparsely populated, so it's easy for the government to grab up land and hide things that they don't want us to see. And then it's particularly with Area 51, they've progressively gone out and out until they what was that, Freedom Ridge, I believe, was the mountain where everybody was climbing up to see the inside the base. They've taken over that, so you can't actually look down on Area 51 anymore, or Groom Lake as it's really called. But I think it's terrible that we have these bases. And it allegedly, at these different bases, such high advanced technology that if they let it out if they let the cat out of the bag, per se, starvation wouldn't be a thing anymore. Money wouldn't be a thing anymore. Gasoline would be gone. OPEC nations gone. NATO probably gone. And I think part of the reason why the governments are making us suffer through all this is because they don't want to, like you said earlier, they don't want to give up their power. And if they let out some of these technologies, you're not going to need to go to the grocery store. And allegedly, they have devices like on the Enterprise where you can go to a wall and say, "Give me tacos," and 30 seconds later, there's tacos materialize in front of you. They probably have handheld energy weapons like the phaser, like the sonic disruptors, like lightsabers even. I mean, the technology that we probably allegedly have would, if it would come out tomorrow, would advance the entire planet, I think, at least 100 years, maybe further than where we are right now.
Yeah, and there's some stuff has good reason and some stuff doesn't. Like there's no good reason for poverty anymore. There's no good reason for hunger anymore. But there might be good reason not to give everyone a freaking Jedi saber.
Yeah.
it might be a good reason not to give someone the Star Trek replicator, because can I modify that to make a plastic explosive? These things have to be considered, and that's kind of one of the things that that I think most people won't really reflect on, because it's like because it's true.
Us.
I mean, it's true because people do these things. I mean, like as a person who has a product I developed and had to get insured at some point, you have to think like, can someone actually bludgeon someone to death with my product? Because someone might, and are they going to sue me for that? So these things really do happen. It's like we can't pretend they don't. And when you talk about right now we don't even want to put bullets in our hands. You think they're going to want to put a plasma rifle in our hands? You know what I mean? So there's those things like that too.
I understand what you mean. One thing I want to elaborate on just a little. I mean, you're saying, I know we talked about this before, that you were physically taken to one of these places. Because one thing that reminds me of is when I was having a lot of UFO experiences, some kind of weird craft came over that made no noise, like a silent helicopter, and me and a friend saw it, and the man in the cockpit, he looked like some Top Gun crap, but he waved kind of mockingly at us and it shot away. So I'm wondering if that was some connection to those kind of like agency that for the government that monitors UFO stuff. And maybe they just threw me back and didn't take me. And they just said, no, we don't want that one, but you maybe, Jerry. But I do think there's stuff like that. And I wonder, by seeing that weird vehicle, if I could have been in danger on that kind of a level too. But that just,
I don't doubt it. Yeah, because I wasn't supposed to remember what I do, what I have. I think it's just because of my natural prowess because like how I've never known that you weren't just supposed to wake up in the dream world. Like that's just every day to me. Like no matter what, I know I'm gonna go from this world to the dream world consciously. And because of that, I think that's why I was able to retain so much. Because if not, I could see you would never know. I mean, even though I was
normal though to go to that's not normal though to wake up consciously in the dream world. That's like a gift. I mean, how do you do that? I don't even remember any of my dreams. Once in a blue moon, it's like pitch black. So I'm like, what's going on with that? But you wake up conscious, like lucid dreaming, but is it more intense or something?
It can be. I mean, now over the years, I've kind of developed my style. You know what I mean, over the year. But yeah, I literally just didn't know. It was just something that I could do. It was just, I would be awake here, and then I'd be awake over there, and I'd come back over here, and go back over there. And so that makes sense to me why, some, secret group would find intrigue with me. And I think that really is what happened, because it does seem like to some level they can track some of this. So I've heard from more than one source how that when we get in certain states, like even a deep meditative state, that's why helicopters will come over and buzz your house, because it gives off a similar signature as some of these weird sonar hits from UFOs.
I attracted something like that, and there were mass UFO sightings with witnesses, and it was something I did that kind of woken that. So they could have, and who knows? I wonder if they did take me, and I just don't remember either. But or maybe they didn't, because at that time I was partying and going crazy. It was after my dad died. I'd never messed with any kind of drug because my dad said he would shoot me, but when he died, I was like, let me show you my little friend. But maybe they threw me back. But definitely it's just interesting, because I think I had a brush with that. Hopefully it wasn't more. I think it was just a brush, and I just, maybe there was something protecting me. Maybe it was God or whatever, because I had a weird situation once where we were partying, and in my wilder days, and there had been something in the house that would have got me in big trouble. The police came there because of loud music. They sent a police car out. This is over 25 years ago or more, probably 30. I lose count. But they sent a police car to get me for disorderly conduct. That police car fell in a ditch. They had to send another car out. I had been doing psychedelics. They called me a vampire for some reason because I was pale. But the car that came to get me fell in a ditch, and they had to send another car to get me. Disorderly conduct, got out, grabbed it, gave it back to who it belonged to, and everybody was like, "What in the hell?" Someone said I prophesized that in 2 weeks the police would come there and mess with us, that I said it when I was messed up. That was in my wilder days. But there's definitely something protecting me. I'm still alive. It's been a long, hard journey, that's for sure. But that's interesting. You talk about the consciousness or the awakening, waking up, and someone sending out something to investigate, because that's what I always knew happened with that weird ass craft. And there's been another time here at Silver Lake, a silent, weird thing was flying around the yard, almost like an invisible drone, and the trees were shaking, and you could not find the thing anywhere. And it sounded smaller than a helicopter, but me and my brother, it was something in the yard invisible. It sounds crazy as hell, but I swear that's what it was like, and you couldn't see anything. So there's something weird to that. They do have something that they send
Mhm.
out, like some agency or whatever. Call it
Yeah.
Men in Black, call it whatever, but there's something to that for sure.
I also have a follow up to the memory thing, Jeff. Something that I've noticed through the years, people that are abducted frequently, whether it's military or alien abductions, the more often they're abducted, eventually, whatever processes they use to erase memory, either you gain an immunity to it or your brain just it gets used to it to the point where as they get older, they're able to remember more and more. When they're young, when they're a little kid, they don't remember a damn thing, hardly anything at all, unless they didn't, hit him with the neuralizer and get the memories away. But when they're older, and or when they stop, that's when the memories start coming back. It's like they've been hit so many times with this neuralizing device or whatever it is that they use to wipe the memories or hide the memories. You eventually get used to it, and boom, you start remembering.
Yeah, our brains kind of naturally, like in a sense, started breaking down some of these barriers from what I could tell, and from other experiencers, because, like especially when it comes to military stuff. Military stuff is pretty specific. Like they try to shove things in different parts of your brain. Alien stuff, just direct alien, could just be trauma blocks, and so over time those might just release too, because as we get older, like we learn to process trauma different and all these other things. So like so if we even feel different about being surprised, like that will change how our memory reflects on when we are surprised by some kind of, say alien encounter. Then you're like, wait a minute, I think I did run into something one time. That's when that stuff starts happening. And then yes, of course, then to be somewhat critical of your own recollection is logical. I mean, it's good, because then you'll be able to find the truth through that anyways. So even in questioning your own memories, that's fine, because if it's true, you'll find your answer. And that's kind of what I found to be true for me on some pretty wild stuff. And so I didn't even trust myself in that sense, because I'm like, well, no one else would anyways if I just told the story. So it's like, what kind of evidence is there? What can I show? What can I point to? And so some of these little things are part of it. And so it does help when other experiencers say, oh yeah, I can see that. And even like how you're saying, Jeff, like some kind of craft that can hover, with not hearing anything, like having that element now makes these kind of things sound a lot more plausible. I mean, and even for myself, I've seen these craft too make no noise. And one of the funniest ones, so I've seen like triangles and stuff make no noise, but it's fine. But one of the times I was looking out in my room, like how I was mentioned, being relatively close to a base anyways, a helicopter, like a regular Apache helicopter, flew across the window but made absolutely no sound. And these things, when they're going that fast, that low, they're like shaking things. And it was
You can hear them before you see them, yeah.
And this thing just went. I'm like what? Like that even just happened. What?
One of the weirdest ones I remember, this is in Lynn Haven, Florida. I was walking around a neighborhood. A big rusty orange ball floated through the sky that looked like it weighed tons and tons and tons. And I was looking to make sure it wasn't attached to a helicopter. And it wasn't. It was just like it looked like it came out of the ocean, like a giant war mine from World War II, but it was orange and rusty, like Oscar the Grouch would live in it. It just floats over the street. I'll never forget it. Maybe I saw into a multidimensional reality or something. I don't know, but there was nothing holding that damn thing up. I don't know how it was floating. Just like this weird rusty ball that floated over the street. Maybe those little hooded aliens live in that thing that I saw a long time ago. Chihuahua! Or whatever. But some weird. Never forget that one for sure. But hey, about mind wiping, they mind wipe us when we get here. So we know there's mind wiping. They send you here when you're bored, you get mind wiped. They're mind wiping everybody left and right, up and down. They're mind wiping everybody.
They did it to C-3PO. Why not do it to us?
I'm telling you, they're mind wiping. That's their thing because they do it. Do you think they do it to us when we're bored here because we'll remember all the past lives and go insane? That's like the Buddhist thing, right?
Well, I mean, how I like to describe that in that sense of like, let's kind of say reincarnation. We're assuming this happens. Then what's the purpose in that sense? What's in it for us in that regard? And in a lot of ways, some people may find this answer unsatisfying, but it's still the truth. Is that when we forget what we were, we're able to become more than we thought we could. But you can't really do that if you're stuck to an identity. And so that's one of the reasons why we do come back sometimes and most of the times I don't remember anything, because it's like we want to expand beyond what we knew. And so we can't do that if we still know what we do. And it does sound like a Buddhist kind of concept, but they're kind of onto something there, because that does seem to be the case. And when you look at things from a point of creation, like once again, if we're a subjective little particle of God, like that would be the way we'd be able to expand even beyond past that, because then we would forget our connection to everything and expand beyond what even that supposed limitation of knowing that answer already. So things like that become potentialities, and I found it somewhat unsatisfying too at first when consulting with my interdimensional people there.
What about Prison Planet, Interstellar Criminal 428333, Mind Wipe Step for interstellar crimes against the Taurinians.
But the weird thing is maybe it's an artifact of our brains being so sophisticated that they're just not capable of taking the memories from the previous life into the new one. Because when my cat was reincarnated, it seemed like she remembered everything from her previous life. So maybe because they have a less advanced brain, maybe they're able to retain more of their previous life's memories than we would with our advanced brains. I don't know. It seems like that might be more of a something that needs to be studied a little bit more. But that's my take on it.
Yeah, it could very well be. And I know from my take on it is kind of like our brains are almost like this multi-dimensional antenna, and so that way in that sense that you tune it, and then all of a sudden the knowledge can be there. And I think that there's been a lot of people who have had the experience of downloading knowledge, or this is where even like your cat's experience has kind of come into play too, because it's like the brain tunes to this. Now the memories are there, and I think that that's kind of where even people have looked into things like dementia and such, where there's when they have moments of lucidity, what is that? How can, if the brain has in a sense have all this calcification going on, and that this memory should be gone, how is it still there? I mean, or these other brain anomalies where people have lost parts of their brain and then it's come back and stuff like that. So it shows that there's some kind of fractal kind of imprint or memory element to it. Yeah. And when we look at what that fractal is in terms of some of the elements that we're comprised of, it kind of starts sounding like a computer chip or an advanced antenna. Like that.
I totally agree with that. I don't know. I can't call up a specific example in my life, but I guarantee you, whether it's download or genetic memory or some kind of code in my hormones that fired off. I asked a question in school, and I knew the answer. And I'm like, how do I know this answer? And I even said to myself after I answered the question, like, how the do I know that? I never have learned about this, and I gave the correct answer in the middle of a class, and it wasn't a guess. I just flat out gave the correct answer, and then my brain goes, where the hell did I learn that from? And I don't remember, Yeah,
because the generations of programming in our DNA says that we can't. And so then that usually shuts off our perception of that. And this is kind of one of the things I tell people is that more than likely, even if you don't, like say someone who doesn't necessarily believe yet in some of the stuff I'll play, more than likely we have been here or some version of Earth before, and we perpetuate in some way. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't be questioning the possibility. We would just accept that we're this one incarnation, that we're kind of like this way, et cetera, et cetera. The innate pondering of it beyond wouldn't even occur to us, if it wasn't possible or didn't probably happen in some way. And so that even works too with some of these repressed memories. It's like if it didn't happen, you wouldn't be arguing with yourself of, did I see that? You saw something and you're arguing with yourself. Because if you didn't see anything, you wouldn't be arguing. You know what I mean? So these things like that, we gotta just watch ourselves on, because we all do it on some level. And so that I think so yeah, and these things kind of, and it's encouraging in that sense, because you realize like, oh yeah, that does make sense. And yeah, like in that sense, some of these memories make more sense, and et cetera, and we become more accepting of ourselves in our experience. And that's kind of how we also break down the traumas that have happened maybe from some of these pretty far out experiences.
Okay, I got a couple of silly exopolitics type questions, and you don't have to go into exquisite detail, but just tell me if you believe if it's true or not. Did Obama time jump to Mars?
Time jumps? I have no idea. Like,
that's the Alfred Weber Basago stuff. I don't think he did. I said he didn't. I said he didn't one time, and they called me a dark cabal Satanist just because I said I didn't believe he did it. But
okay, just real quick on that. I will add this. Okay, I heard Basiago pre-Obama. Okay, and I would pose this question to him: how come you didn't bring up the little black kid then that was going to be president? Why didn't you bring him up then? Why didn't you bring him up as soon as Obama started thinking about running? Because I know you follow politics to some degree, I do too. And he was a dark horse state senator out of Chicago. I knew him before that. Right then, he should have said, "This guy's going to be president." That was the kid I saw.
I got a story with Guy Weddle and me. We're going to interview Basago. He said yes. We were going to probably jump him with something. It was probably going to be a shock rock show that was going to be troublesome. But Basago saw something about a dildo on my wall and wrote me and canceled because of the children. Like it was just something stupid I said on my wall about a dildo on Facebook or a meme or something. I don't remember, but he canceled. Now my other one, this is someone I've interviewed, but I don't care. She stopped talking to me because of those two, because of that situation. Laura Eisenhower, relative of Eisenhower. I've interviewed her before. It was okay. We weren't mean to her or anything, but she had heard that they don't like me, so you know how they stick together. Oh, Jeffrey's bad. These dark cabal Satanists. Oh, so what do you think about that story? You think there may be some truth to it? I thought maybe some truth because it's so elaborate and just weird. Who would make it up? But I know people would, but I didn't know. I was kind of on the fence. But what do you think about that story?
You mean about Andy Pisargo's in general, or Laura Eisenhower?
Eisenhower story.
Oh, Laura. Okay, her origin story, so to speak, of someone trying to recruit her and this and the ex and stuff like that. That's all. That sounds plausible. Like it's not the most outlandish. It's the stuff that came later. That's
I don't know the other stuff. I know she channeled some Virgin Mary or something. I don't know, but
honestly, because Laura's heavily targeted. I mean, I've seen that firsthand where people are trying to manipulate her. So it's like, and like right now, honestly, I don't know where I stand with her, but man, I've literally helped her off the freaking ground in public and stuff like that. I've literally held her up and let's get you safe, and you know what I mean. And she might have cut me off because yeah, I'm not going to buy that Trump is anything the way he is, which is a crook.
Yeah, she's into the Q tip, the Q tip, like Will call.
And that's part of the mind hack. That's obvious, and that's why I see tons of people. They're literally raging for the machine now. They're literally campaigning for a major candidate, and that's like some of my colleagues who we lectured with, been in conference with. I'll tell them to your face. I'm like, dude, you are raging for the machine, campaigning for a major candidate. Like, and we have you on record saying that you will never do that. That these people all work for the same people. You know what I mean? It's like, and you don't think you're mind hacked at all.
I mean, that Q thinks one of the dead Kennedys is the real Q or whatever. Like a Kennedy that died's gonna come pull his hood off of Q. It's like, I'm Q. I am Robert Kennedy or whoever it was. I forget.
I'm pretty sure it's a bot that someone augments. And
they
yeah,
blamed
there's
some white dudes for it, but I forget their names. There's been like
well, and
Vice
then
articles.
they deny it, and I honestly don't think it's them either. Because the most legit research I've seen was people who trace people like Manafort's IP to this
Russian
service
bots.
that does this. That does this,
I've
and they weren't
wondered if
Russian.
it's the Russians.
It's not. It's not
I
Russian.
wondered.
It's one of these. It's an American corporation that probably has international connections, but there's been people who trace some of these IPs, and it goes to these people who do this kind of social engineering, and so it's a social engineering thing, and no one wants to
that they're like saying China and Russia are gonna like go to war with us and put Trump into the throne still, like weird stuff like that before it's news.
That's one of the things I tell people about China. It's like, dude, China will never go to war with us because it would be like Walmart opening fire on all of their customers. And it's like, we're the people that buy everything. They're not going to buy a bunch of rubles or whatever. And come on. It's like, they're selling the most stuff here. And so like, they're not going to blow us up. They're not going to know. They're not. They're going to use their political prowess to work in their favor, just like we do to everyone else. I mean, it's like, that's why I think it's so funny about America. They're like all indignified when they do something to us, but we're doing it to everyone. It's like, come on.
That stuff is scary, the way people believe that a little too much.
So yeah, and this does work into people like, say, Laura Eisenhower, because she's a political body. She is a political figure because of her family, and so she is exactly the influencers that are targeted by a lot of these groups.
From what I've seen, it spawned like these personalities: Simon Parks, Charlie Ward, Scott McKay, Freedom Patriot. There's others, but they're all part of that weird queue, and there's like dominating the conspiracy stuff right now, the truther movement, to such a level that I see it at Force News, and people will click the crap out of it. They love it, and they're like, oh, and they call it hopium, the people that hate it. So it's like, it's so weird. It really is like a weird cult that I don't even understand, but
it is.
bizarre.
Considering we've had a picture of Banksy, I mean, where's the picture of Q? You know what I mean? There's these simple questions like this that usually people are found. I mean, even Satoshi, the supposed creator of Bitcoin, have certain suspicions it might be this one group. There's something tangible. You know what I mean? And so this kind of lets you know that that there's manipulation.
I just have an announcement to make. I'm Q.
Nice.
I've got something to say. I got something to say about the Laura Eisenhower situation, and I've never met her, and I would love to interview her. But she does come off as a little bit quirky because she does like the Reiki type healing and all that. And a lot of people don't think those people are weird. So what? I like weird people anyway. So I identify with weird people more readily. But before she even came on the scene, like the first things that I came across back in the 70s, 74, 75, 76, she would have been a teenager, and I was like 10 or 11. The Greada Treaty, which is what her father was doing in Edwards in 1950s, talking with these three groups of aliens and making a pact with them to trade their technology for the ability to abduct a human being at will and as many cows as they want, which is kind of part of the story. I heard that long before I even heard of a Laura Eisenhower. So whatever you think about her origin story,
was it something else?
Or the grandfather?
This is from her grandfather. From Ike, David Eisenhower. He allegedly bartered this treaty, this Greada Treaty, with the aliens, bad aliens at that. And I heard this way. This is one of the first things I ever heard of. So I absolutely believe her story. Maybe because of her the way she talks. She seems she's a very mellow person. She's not one of those aggressive people. People just pick on her. So I would love to hear her story from the first-hand point of view.
Jay, she thinks we're dark cabal Satanists. We're not going to interview her.
No, I didn't say we were going to. It would be nice. Just because I've been trying to find the two things that I've been trying to research since the 70s were the Greada Treaty. Is it true? Did they barter a deal with the aliens? And two, allegedly, in the second season of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry was approached by the Council of the Nine as the Men in Black types that approached him while he was in Desilu Studios on the back lot of Paramount getting ready to film season 2. They came up to him and said, "Hey, look, we like your show. It's pretty good. It's pretty close. But here's the thing. and they told him about the Galactic Federation they're part of, and 180 planets and 180 or 65 planets and 180 different species that were a part of this Federation. And then the very next season, in the beginning of the Star Trek show, it was the United Earth Space Probe Agency, which controlled the Enterprise. In season 2, it's now the United Federation of Planets. And this idea came to Gene Roddenberry from the Council of the Nine, and I have found only like 2 other researchers that have heard about that, and one of them was Nick Redfern.
Look up Timothy Beckley. I guarantee you Timothy Beckley has something on that. It may be a little sleazy, but he's got something on it. But I like Timothy Beckley. But he sends me stuff sometimes. But we got to close out. There's the truth to it. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. But we got to close out. You're listening to United Public Radio. Jay, you got anything Jerry, you got anything you want to plug or say a link or anything you want to get out?
Sure. Yeah. Once again, thanks for having me on, guys. It's always a fun time. We always get into some good stuff. And yeah, you can find me at theholotree.com. So it's, spell it out, TheHolotree.com. So it's like hollow, like a hologram. And you can see some of the products and services we got going on there. If you just want to inquire about maybe something we spoke about on the show, there'll be some more information on there too, I'm sure.
And Jerry's been around since our first incarnations of us at the beginning. With old Weddle. I still can't believe Weddle croaked. I can't believe it's just hard to believe. Sucks. But all right, everybody. You listen to United Public Radio. Thanks so much for listening. We have a stunt man next week. A stunt man. He was in Guiding Light too, so I'm sure his site's called like Urban Swashbuckler, so I'm sure it's going to be weird. All right, everybody, have a good weekend. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody. Good night.